Hi, Sean here from the Trusted Agent Podcast, and thank you for joining us on today's show, where each week we talk to experts both inside the industry and outside the real estate industry to gain their unique perspectives on what they believe real estate agents can do to build their credibility, efficiencies, and connections with others. A huge shout out to our sponsor, Rezo Real Estate Sales Online, who's absolutely revolutionizing how real estate agents deal with prospective buyers and vendors. Their online platform that manages the offers and acceptance process is simple, easy to use, giving time back to the agents so they can do what they do best. All right, so stick with me and let's see who today's guest on the show is. Hi, everyone. Sean here from the Trusted Agent Podcast, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have our guest here today, Alais from Gartner, and this episode's going to be a little bit different because we're going to talk about the connection with others and how agents can form stronger connections with either potential vendors or buyers, or even with their teams. So please welcome to the show, Alais. Hello, Alais.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks so much for joining us today. Now, we met, was it about 4 years ago?
I would say so. Yeah, it's been a while.
And you've been with Gartner for how long now?
It's been just over 8 years with Gartner.
Now, for our viewers and listeners, I met Alais as we said, about 4 years ago when I was running a sales team, and I got to know a bit about Gartner and in particular the program, the Challenger Sales. And we invited Alais in to talk to our sales team about how we can form particular stronger relationships with others. And there was one part that really stuck out for me, and that's really what I want to unpack today for our viewers and listeners today. But before we get into that, Alais, can you give us our audience a bit of a background as to who you are and where you come from and what you're all about?
Sure, thanks, Sean. So my name is Alais. I'm a sales leader right now at Gartner, so leading a team of account executives, and really my background is in languages. So it's interesting talking about trust and communication. I studied French and Spanish, lived abroad, always been very passionate about connecting with people and persuasion and understanding what makes people tick. And I really took that into a career in B2B sales. So worked in various countries, sold to various members of the C-suite, whether that be heads of sales and marketing, CFOs, heads of HR, people and culture. But what really drives me is this idea of sharing best practice, sharing insight, and just adapting your communication. Being a better sales professional, being a better leader and manager is really what I'm interested in.
Excellent. Well, this is the audience for you. So our audience is predominantly real estate sales agents, all looking to increase their market share and get one up on their competition, but ultimately to make a difference for themselves, their families, and community in the industry overall. What are some of the common challenges that you see for sales people out there in general?
Sure, I'll outline two common challenges I see. The first one ties very nicely to our discussion, which is social styles and not understanding either your own or those of the person that you're speaking to. This is where people really get it wrong, going in with the same approach. Maybe they're very ballsy and showy and trying to drown their clients in data. Maybe they're more softly relationship building, but I see people failing to understand their own style and then failing to adapt their approach to others. And the second pitfall I see, which probably ties into that point, is then wasting time trying to do deals with the wrong kinds of contacts. If anyone's read the Challenger Sale, you'll know these as talkers, and really it can be very alluring to spend time with clients and prospects who always take your call or up for a chat, but ultimately they're not the ones who get deals done. And so the second problem or pitfall that I see sales professionals fall into is treating all prospects and clients equally and not being judicious enough about who they're trying to mobilize their deal with.
I've talked to several agents in the past where they put all their eggs in one basket, talking to one person, realizing that person's not the decision maker. It's actually probably the wife at home or another person part of the trust. So I can totally understand that they could be spending the wrong time. What was it about Gartner that really responded to you to why you joined Gartner in particular?
It's a good question, and I've been there a while. So a couple of things. One is just the quality of the ideas and the insights. This is not, Gartner sort of dictating what we think is best. It's really based on observable best practice. So out there, we have thousands of clients across the world, across industries, types of executives we work with, but they're all facing ultimately pretty similar challenges. It can come down to people, process, technology. So what really keeps me interested is that every day is different. Every day you're helping someone truly change their career, their business. And then of course it's got to be the people, the opportunity to work with smart people, to learn from inspiring leaders, and then to have opportunities come your way. I've relocated halfway across the world. I've had the chance to work with some amazing clients, and that's what really keeps me here.
Excellent. I want to go back to one of the main challenges that you said was understanding your own social style and then flexing it or adapting it to meet someone else's. This is the part that I want to unpack for salespeople today. But before we go into that, I wanted to differentiate the distinct difference of authenticity and being flexible or adapting a similar approach. Do you feel that some people might feel that they're not being authentic if they're feeling they have to adapt their approach?
It's a good point. And one thing I'll say is, the social styles, they're based on observable behaviors and preferences. And as you've probably seen yourself, most people don't fit really neatly into one quadrant only. We all have a bit of this and that. And so it's really drawing on the natural aspects that you're good at and bringing to the forefront certain parts of that, depending on who you're speaking to. So I'd say it's more putting the information that you're giving into a context where your listener will really hear it and be able to do something useful with it.
Yeah. Now, this is the part where I really want to have a look at the quadrants. All right. So this is broken down into 4 quadrants. And let's test my memory here. So 4 years ago, you presented this quadrant concept to us. And I have to say, I love it. I use it weekly, if not daily, with all my sales teams and people I talk to in the industry. I'm someone who's looked at everything, Dale Carnegie and Alan Pease and Tony Robbins and everyone. I love models, but this is the one that's been most simple for me to remember and put into place. And I look at it from how can I fine tune my sales approach. So the 4 quadrants are amiable, expressive, analytical, and driver. Did I get it right?
Correct. Well done.
Okay, good. So not much has changed over the last 4 years. Okay, so my terminology is still right. Okay, so can you, for our audience, just go through some of the key common traits that separates those 4?
Absolutely. And so this is social styles based on a very well-known model by Tacom. That's Tracom. So we can get into this later, but anyone who's curious can look that up. And really, these are, as I said, observable behaviors on 2 key dimensions. So dimension number 1 is assertiveness. Are you someone who has more of an asking approach, really curious, ask questions, or more of a telling approach? And I will caveat and say there's no one correct behavior to be or one style that's more appealing than the others, but that's dimension number 1. The second dimension is responsiveness. Are you someone who displays your emotions, sort of wears your heart on your sleeve, pretty expressive, or somebody who's more in control of emotions, perhaps a bit more reserved? So those are the 2 dimensions that we're working on. And I think you kind of said them in the right order as well. So I'll start with analytical. These are more of a asking versus telling, and more in control of emotions versus displaying emotions. So the name kind of gives it away, but analytics, they love organization, they love structure, they're very into intellectual, task-oriented work, good problem solving skills, and more interested in the facts and the data than perhaps in the people and the ideas and the creativity. So on one side of the quadrant here, you've got analytical, still in the top right. So again, very much in control of emotions, but conversely, more of a telling approach, more perhaps proactive. You've got your drivers. These are people, and I'm sure as I talk, you'll have some personal contacts or colleagues or clients that come to mind. Drivers really seek control and being in charge. They want freedom to manage themselves, manage others, and they're very focused on the results, perhaps more so than the people, but they're very pragmatic. They're not afraid to make decisions, not afraid to take control and drive for action.
Yeah.
So those are the top two. Then you have your amiables. So these are people who are more asking, but certainly displayed their emotions more. They're very people-oriented, very sociable. They like to identify with a group and feel that they belong to a group. Great listening skills, great people skills, very supportive, and will tend to dislike conflict and try to avoid it wherever possible. So that's your amiables. And then the final box is expressive. So bottom right, if you think about these dimensions, more telling and more displaying emotion. They're very, articulate. They tend to be quite visionary. They've got these ideas, high emotional intelligence, high creativity, and can be pretty spontaneous when making decisions and taking action. So those are the four. Again, no right or wrong. I'm sure people will identify with some, maybe others, and even changed a little bit over time. Personally, I probably started more analytical, and as I've grown and led bigger teams, I'd say I'm moving towards driver, and maybe the pressures of leadership kind of do that. So it's interesting to see over time. But in a nutshell, those are the descriptions of the four styles to give people a starting point of, oh, what do I think I might be?
Yeah, I think you're right. It can change. And when I was first introduced to this concept, I thought, and I am an amiable expressive combination. So under that, I'm down here in the lowers, and I'm probably leading more to the expressive than the amiables. But one of the things I thought, well, as a professional salesperson, my goal is to put myself as close to the center as possible so that I can appeal or attract and engage with all four. So that was the challenge I started setting for myself. So it was first understanding your own social preference and then how you can relate to others. One of the observations I did notice that when you look at the quadrant, the opposites of being amiables and drivers and analyticals being opposite to expressives. And I started thinking about the internal relationships or of every organization I worked in, and people who frustrate you tend to be the opposite to you on the quadrant. Has that ever come up before?
It has, both in sort of client AE relationships, but also inter colleague relationships. You'll get the person who jumps into the meeting and wants to spend time chit-chatting. How are the kids? What was your holiday like? And you can tell the other person is just frustrated, wants to get down to business, looking at their watch or starting to close off. So we certainly see examples of, again, just not appreciating what the other person's style is and what turns them off. Or say, for example, analytics, they like to be prepared. If you can give them the stats ahead of time, they'll come in really thoughtful and much more open to a discussion versus going in there and again leading with perhaps more of an expressive style.
Yeah, and for our audience, the expressive style for myself is I used to go in with a vision or an idea or a concept and try to sell it to analytical groups and expect them just to get the gist and go along with it. But no, they wanted the facts, the figures, the plan, the strategy, the process. And I was like, oh, I found that so frustrating. Can't we just get on with it? So it is funny how the two domains can be separate. If you think about in real estate, you have the stereotypical, I'm not saying all agents are this, but they tend to be labeled or painted as being the drivers, the alpha agent going out, damn it, I'm going to win at no costs or sorry, at all costs. And I don't care who I burn along the way, but not all agents are like that. But there certainly are some. Then you have the amiables where we might look at team leaders or principals of businesses that put their team first. And you see this in all of their marketing and all of their materials. I don't even sell houses because I don't want the team to feel like I'm competing with them. And I actually don't like conflict. And I'm trying to create this harmonious environment where everyone has an opportunity to grow and succeed. And then you have the analyticals where it's all about systems and processes. More often than not, they have automation, end to end, everything's seamless and it just runs and everything's got a little tick along the way. Then the expressives, well, I think that's everyone else who doesn't have those and maybe a mixing pot in there. Have you ever in all your studies had, whether it be Challenger or anything else, is there any measure of success been attributed to one of these quadrants more so than any of the others, or what's your research showing you?
Yeah, good question. Look, in short, no, they can all succeed if you look for some of the signs of who you're dealing with and manage the deal through that. There are, as perhaps you've described, certain roles that tend to lean towards certain styles of bringing more success, or certain industries, perhaps. So, as you said, generally your sellers, your agents will have driver tendencies. You need people who are goal oriented, who are going to see that target and go out and get it. You get people who are data scientists. They tend to be more analytical and need that attention to detail. You wouldn't have a great expressive going in there and being in charge of your data governance. So there are certainly themes, but the good news for people is there's no you must be a driver to succeed. It's really more about adapting to the conversation and the type of client that you have.
So what are some telltale signs? Okay, so if people understand who they might be and listening to this podcast so far, they might go, yeah, that sounds more like me. But taking that step forward of going, I still want to maintain my authenticity, but I do want to meet the other person to find a resolve or a mutual beneficial outcome. What are some words that they could be using or behavioral traits that they could start introducing into those conversations and engagements?
Sure, I'm glad you started with words, because I've got some examples of good openers and also things to avoid saying or framing when you know you're the kind of person that you're dealing with. We'll start with words, and then there's also sort of tells, power words, persuasion techniques, and landmines to avoid. So let's again go through the quadrant, starting with your amiables. Really key to begin with some personal comments, break the ice, chat about their weekend. These are people who don't want to be hard sold to. That's really going to turn them off. So thinking about, making your case softly, non-threateningly, and lots of how questions, because you want to draw opinions out of them. Some things to avoid with amiables that are going to create more tension are things like going straight into business, we talked about earlier, being overly domineering or demanding, and also forcing them to respond quickly to your objectives. Amiables maybe like a bit of time, so that's where you're asking those how questions to really draw them out. Same thing for your expressives. You want it to feel like a warm, friendly environment. Don't overwhelm them with lots of details. Conversely to analytics, who will ask you for more and more facts and data, expressives would prefer to see that in writing. And ask questions that are to do with feelings, that really get opinions and comments out of them. Expressives love a story, so see if you can relay a story as you're sharing information with them. Again, some things that will turn this conversation south or create a bit of tension are being too tight-lipped, being cold and straight to the point, trying to domineer and control the conversation, and driving really hard on your facts and figures and abstractions. So you can already see some similarities there between the things to avoid with amiables and expressives. Then you get down to your analytics. So certainly prepare the case in advance, give them something to read, be ready with all the facts, and stick more to business versus perhaps the chit chat and the personal opener of an amiable. They need you to be accurate and realistic, and things that again will turn them off are being too casual or informal, coming across as loud and giddy, or being too disorganized or messy. So think about that as your in offline communications or what happens beyond the conversation itself. The final one is your drivers. Similar to analytics, got to be to the point. Hate chit chat. You need to stick to business. You need to be well prepared and have some kind of, if possible, support package or something for them to read beforehand. They love concrete proven examples. Things that will turn them off are talking about things that don't relate to the issue at hand, leaving things cloudy or unanswered, and again, appearing disorganized or missing deadlines. So those are some of the things to just weave into perhaps how you open the conversation, how you convey facts, opinions, and the kinds of questions that you ask.
So in thinking about real estate agents and putting in their perspective as well. So if they're with an amiable person, and they're doing a listing appointment with someone wanting to sell their house, They could be talking about, well, tell me a bit of history around this house and the family and so forth. And what are you looking for and what's important to your family moving forward? So really getting that sense of community and emotive response, I suppose.
Yeah.
With analyticals, you might want to have a listing kit or using data from CoreLogic or RP data, which is information sources for real estate agents, and really using that. And then for your drivers, you might have a really SMIC listing kit that you can send in advance and gives people an understanding of who you are, what you're about, and so forth. Now, again, this isn't about you, it's about your audience. So how quickly do you think that agents could identify what type of person that they're dealing with?
It's a good question, and the answer is pretty early on. You'll start to notice some things. Firstly, about how they've been in before you meet them. What have they been organized and given you? These are the 3 times that I can do, or has it been a bit all over the place? When you catch them on the phone, do they spend 5 minutes talking about the weather and the weekend? So there's some signs you can look out for there, and then again, the kinds of questions that they're asking. So like your drivers, they want the what, the analytics, they want the how, but your expressives and your amiables, it's more about the why and the who. So pay attention, any sort of pre-appointment correspondence, look at the language that they're using and think about how your meetings have been set up. They're probably the easiest ways. Like, it does require a bit of just talking, but within the first few moments of the conversation, really you'll get a sense of, is my style hitting the mark? How are they responding to me? And start to adapt the language that you're using, the tone that you're using, or the overall impression that you're giving off.
Yeah, I like the look at the communication, because if you could see in text messages and emails, if it's bullet point direct, you kind of know exactly where you need to position yourself. My wife is an analytical driver, little tendency, but more, hardcore analytical. So when she delivers a message to me, it sometimes comes with blunt force trauma. I think this quadrant's really helped our marriage. Actually, I remember drawing it once on the back of a pizza box when we're away, but to have an argument, I said, no, look, we just need to assess who we are right now and where we sit on this quadrant. So I thank you, Gartner, and at least we're probably saving our marriage on that particular weekend.
It's very versatile, many uses.
It is. Okay, so what are some ways that agents can learn more about this? Or do you have any toolkits or frameworks I can maybe attach to this podcast or insert in a graphic image here? But what are some ways that they can start applying this or get more information around this quadrant?
Sure. Well, the good news is that there's so much out there on the internet. So just searching social styles Tacom, Tracom, there'll be free tests that you can do, and I highly recommend doing it yourself, but then doing it as a team, which you no better way to understand how to work with your manager, how to work with your colleagues, and it's a bit fun to share examples and ideas. So that would be step one, is just do the test yourself, see the visual. It's easily available on the internet. But if you're interested in more, Gartner.com.au, this is where you'll find sort of the public-facing insights that we have. There's everything there, but particularly for salespeople, you can learn more about mobilizers and talkers that we just briefly touched upon to get your deals across the line, to think about better pipeline management, and to explore more of this social styles piece.
Yeah, and I love that you brought this up for team building as well, because we did it as a team as well. And I remember the walking away, and I've done Strengths Finder as a team, and I'm still a supporter of that, a Gallup program. But this one in particular, the Gartner, was an eye opener for me understanding, well, someone can have strengths, but their preferred social communication styles is something different. It actually gives you a bit of an insight as to why people communicate the way they do. So if you're having problems with your team, or you're looking to build a stronger team environment, and you think that there's a communication underlying issue amongst the team, perhaps this test could be a really good starting point for us to start learning and appreciating the differences of each other, but how collectively we can work closer together as well.
That's a really great point. And at the end of the day, you've got your style and preferences. Everybody else does too. It's the same information, but you're really being mindful about how you convey it. Your message will go down so much better if you're careful with the words, you're careful in the way you set up the conversation, and just pay attention to are they engaged here, or am I turning them off because we're actually on two opposite sides of the quadrant.
Yeah. Alais, it's been wonderful to have you as a guest today. Thank you so much. Let's not wait another 4 years before we catch up again. And I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
For our audience, thanks for joining us today. I hope you got something out today. I love visiting this subject. As you can see, I'm highly passionate about this quadrant. If you're a salesperson looking to get an edge on your competition and increase greater connection with others, I'm telling you, this is a fantastic tool. A lot of free resources here. It's not complicated to learn or to put in practice. And Gartner and Alais are there for additional support as well. So we hope to see you on the next episode of the Trusted Agent Podcast. And thank you so much for joining us today. All the best. Bye.